Hare Krishna. So, welcome everyone to this wonderful Bhagavad Gita reading session. We have just completed chapter 3, and it gives me immense pleasure that all of you stuck around with me for so long. So, in today's session, we will start with the fourth chapter. This is going to be a quick session because we will be just discussing an overview and a kind of overview and the first sloka, and then more serious discussions will start from the next session onwards. Okay. So before starting, I would like to perform some pranam mantras. So those who know can repeat after me. Those who don't, please try to listen very intently because listening is also very purifying. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gururo Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijan Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenbandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prem Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namah Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityanand Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langete giri Yat kripatamham vande Shri Gurum Deenatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay. So yes, uh, we were discussing about. We have just finished the third chapter, and we are about to start the fourth chapter, as I was saying. Okay, and the third chapter was named the Karma Yoga. Okay, we had seen in detail about what is Karma Yoga, which is the greatest eternal enemy of the human race. Okay, and so on and so forth. Right, and sloka by sloka, we covered all of them. Okay, and it gives me immense pleasure that we were successfully able to complete it. So we'll start the fourth chapter from today onwards. Okay, and the title of the fourth chapter is the transcendental knowledge. Very important chapter, some very nice verses we will learn in this particular chapter. Okay, and if you can recall in the last session, okay, like towards the end of the third chapter, Sri Krishna spoke a lot about lust. Okay, like lust is the eternal enemy. He also described which are the seating places of the lust in the body and how it can be overcome. Okay, how with steady mind and intelligence, a person should control the senses, and by control of senses, they can defeat and conquer the eternal enemy, which is lust. Okay, so this is what we saw towards the end of the third chapter. Okay, and in the third chapter itself, like if you go a little bit towards the beginning, or rather towards the middle of the third chapter, okay, Shri Krishna also spoke about the Nishkam Karma Yoga and Sakam Karma Yoga. Yes, so Nishkam Karma Yoga, as all of us know by now, okay, that a person is doing some work, okay, but they are not attached to the fruits of that work. Okay, they're completely detached. They're just doing it because, as a matter of their duty, they are doing it, okay, without any attachment towards the work or the results of the work. Correct? See, the Sakam Karma Yoga, on the other hand, is just the opposite. Okay, that person is either attached to the work itself, or they are very much attached to the fruits of the work. that I'm going to do this work so that in return towards the end I will be getting this and this. Okay, that is the mindset. Or I'm doing this work because I love to do this. Okay, so that is the attachment towards the work. Okay, so in both of the cases, it is the Sakam Karma Yoga, and if the person is completely detached from the results of the work or from the work itself, then they are executing it as a Nishkam Karma Yoga. Yes. And when someone performs the Nishkam Karma Yoga, okay, they become eligible to get this transcendental knowledge, the knowledge which we are going to get in this fourth chapter. Okay. So this is a kind of a quick summary of what we studied in the third chapter and what's awaiting us in the fourth chapter. Yes. And what does this transcendental knowledge do? Now that is one question which might be asked. Okay. So the transcendental knowledge, that means knowledge which is spiritual in nature. Okay, which does not deal with any mundane topics of this material world. Okay, so that knowledge, what does it do? It actually sharpens one's intelligence. Okay, it strengthens one's intelligence to such an extent that a person can completely defeat lust. Okay, this is exactly what Sri Krishna said in the chapter number 3, towards the end of the chapter 3, right? So the idea is to control the senses and ultimately defeat this eternal enemy lust. So with the help of this transcendental knowledge, okay, we will sharpen our intelligence. We will try to strengthen our intelligence, and with that, we should be able to control the senses. Okay, so they can. I mean, any person who is basically performing the Nishkam Karma Yoga and then they finally become eligible to get the transcendental knowledge, such person can completely overcome lust and such a person can move from mode of passion to mode of goodness. Okay, so in my previous lectures, some of you might recall that we spoke about, how to reach to that, the mode of pure goodness, or on the transcendental platform, how to surpass the three modes of material nature, right? And the only criteria for doing that was that one has to be situated in the mode of goodness for majority of the time. Maximum number of time one has to be situated in the mode of goodness. If someone is in the mode of passion or mode of ignorance, these two modes are basically known as the lower modes of material nature, the rajogun and tamogun. So if that is there within us, then such people, they might start with some spiritual practices, but in due course of time, they will just give it up. Okay, they will get bored, or uh, they will not find it interesting, or something like that. Inspiration will not be there to steadily continue with those practices, those spiritual practices. Okay, so in order to execute the spiritual practice or devotional service or bhakti very nicely, one has to be situated on the platform of goodness most of the times, if not always. Okay, so this transcendental knowledge will help us to strengthen our intelligence so that we will be able to defeat the lust. And once we defeat the lust, what will happen? Most of the time we will be situated in the mode of goodness or satogun. Okay, and in if we continue to do that for a prolonged period of time, then the person can actually transcend the three modes of material nature. They can go beyond the three modes of material nature, and they can be situated in what is known as the Shuddha Sattva, or the mode of pure goodness. And such people, even though they are existing in this material world, such people are completely liberated souls. Okay, so this is what we are going to learn here. And another question might be asked, that how to get this transcendental knowledge. Okay, I may say that, okay, I have been practicing Nishkam Karma Yoga for quite some time, so I'm eligible for that. So how can I get this transcendental knowledge? Yes, so the answer is that Sri Krishna is going to give it himself in this fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and he's also going to explain that how this knowledge is coming down from, you know uh, a bona fide guru shishya parampara, through a chain of disciplic succession. Okay, what is the importance of this chain of disciplic succession? Okay, so we'll learn all these things in the fourth chapter. Let's start. Okay, and in this session we'll only read the first sloka. From next session onwards, we will start maybe 2 or 3 shlokas we'll try to cover. Okay. So let me share the screen and then we can read the shloka. So I hope the screen is visible now. So Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 4, verse number 1 goes like this. Sri Bhagawanuvacha imam vivasvate yogam proktavanam aham avyayam vivasvan manave praha manur ishvake abravit. Once again, imam vivasvate yogam proktavan aham avyayam vivasvan manave praha manur ishvakave bravit. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The personality of Godhead said, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku. So, a very nice verse. A lot of things we will learn from this. So, let's discuss this further, and we will try to go like first we will try to see some important words in the shloka, and then we will see some important points which we can take away from this verse. Okay. So here, Sri Bhagwan Uvacha, okay, Sri Krishna spoke, okay, and he speaks now the transcendental knowledge to Arjun, okay, and here he is going to speak about himself, okay. We are also going to discuss about Sri Krishna, his appearance in this material world, okay, how does it happen, why he comes, okay, what are his activities, and so on and so forth, okay. Right now, he is speaking something very important and little different, okay, which we will see in some time, okay. So here Sri Krishna says imam vivasvate yogam, okay, that means this science, okay, which science? Science which is imperishable, okay. Imam avyayam yogam, avyayam means imperishable, okay, and yogam is science, okay. And this science is not a normal science. It is a science of yoga, yogam. That's what he is saying, right? And he says that this science was spoken to me, proktavan aham. That means aham, I, and proktavan means I spoke. Okay? Spoke to whom? Vivaswan. Vivaswan is the name of the Suryadev or the sun god, right? So Vivasvan Praha Manave, that means Vivasvan or the sun god, the Suryadev, he spoke this science to his son Manu. Okay. And then Manur Ishvake Bravi. Okay, that means Manu spoke to his son Ishvaku. Ishvaku is the same king who is like Lord Sri Ramchandra actually appeared in the lineage of Ishvaku. Okay. So this is what Lord Sri Krishna is saying, that I have instructed this yoga, the science, imperishable science, which is the yogic science basically, to sun god or the Suryadev. Okay, and Suryadev Vivaswan, he instructed it to his son Manu, and then Manu in turn spoke this to his son Ishvaku. Okay, and like that, through a chain, it is coming down. Actually, this knowledge. Okay. So very common misconception, okay, about the Bhagavad Gita is that this Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra some 5,000 years ago, okay, which is not right, which is completely, wrong notion, wrong conception, okay. And this misconception is there in the minds of most of the people. Right? Why? Because hardly we take time out to read the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Even if someone starts reading, they hardly get past the first chapter. तो पहले चैप्टर में ही इतना बोर हो जाते हैं कि यार फिर तब आगे पढ़ने की इच्छा नहीं है. Right? So this is the situation actually. Okay. But those who have read the Bhagavad Gita thoroughly, okay, they will never have this misconception. Never. Okay. And that is why we lay so much stress on reading the scriptures. Read the scriptures. TV serials are not the source of truth. Okay, they actually work for TRPs. Okay, but this Vedic science, the Vedic scriptures, okay, they have been written by Srila Vyasdev, who was an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself. Okay, so that knowledge is absolute. So always we should try to get this kind of knowledge, any spiritual knowledge, from the scriptures and not from any other source. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada explains this very nicely in the purport. We'll see that in some time. Okay. But a few points to note here. Okay. That first is the history of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. We'll come to that in just a moment. Okay. Another important thing to note is that Sri Krishna says that he imparted this knowledge to Suryadev Vivaswan. Okay. Now Suryadev is the ruler of the sun planet. Okay. He is the king of the sun planet. And in Dwapar Yuga also, when we see that Krishna imparted this knowledge to Arjun, okay, and Arjun was a member of the royal class, of the royal order, right? So in both the cases, this knowledge was imparted to members of the royal order, okay. That brings us to another misconception which is there in the minds of most of the people, okay, that because this is a part of Vedic literature, the Bhagavad Gita is a part of the Vedic literature, therefore it should only be studied by brahmacharis and sannyasis. Okay. So again, this is not correct at all. This is not correct at all. In fact, Sri Krishna proved this conception wrong by giving the knowledge to the ruling class or to the royal order in both the cases. One, when he imparted this knowledge to the Suryadev, okay, and second, when he imparted this knowledge to Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So this Bhagavad Gita is actually meant for everyone, okay, everyone. But it is most important for the royal class or the royal order. And why is it so? We will just read from the purport. Okay. Srila Prabhupada explains this beautifully. So we'll read from the purport. The kings of all planets are specially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand the science of the Bhagavad Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage and from lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in the eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the executive heads of all the states, all the planets, are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all these states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path utilizing the opportunity for human life. Yes, so we have seen, before in the previous sessions, we have, discussed this several times that this human life is very, very rare, extremely rare. Okay, this is the opportunity where we can actually do something to break this cycle of birth and death, go back home, back to Sri Krishna. So any ruling class, any royal order, okay, of any state, okay, not just one country or a few countries, but of different planetary systems also, okay, they all have this responsibility of ensuring that this particular knowledge is imparted to all the citizens, okay, through culture, through devotion, through education in different ways, so that all the people, okay, they can make use of, they can make the best use of this human life, they can break the cycle of birth and death and go back home, back to Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of human life. Yes. So this is very, very important, and that is why Sri Krishna imparted this knowledge to Suryadev Vivaswan, okay, and to Arjun, who was also the member of royal order, because they are in that position, okay, to get this executed to each and every member of the kingdom, to all the subjects of the kingdom. Yes, so that is um, uh, something which Srila Prabhupada is trying to convey through this purport. Okay, now let's now try to trace the history of this Bhagavad Gita, history of this ancient science. Okay, so now some heavy mathematics will be required. Okay, we will be dealing in very large numbers, and when it comes to large numbers, unfortunately, my addition is not that good. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to simplify the things. Okay, we will speak in approximate values. Okay, so for simplicity's sake, for sake of simplicity, we will try to take some simple values. Okay, So duration of Kali Yuga, okay, that is 4,32,000 years, okay, and out of which 5,000 years have passed, little more, a few hundred years more than 5,000 years, but roughly we can say that 5,000 years have passed, okay. So 4,32,000 years, the duration of Kali Yuga. Out of this, 5,000 have just passed, okay. Now, before Kali Yuga, there was Dwapar Yuga, okay, and the duration was 8,64,000 years, okay. So let's consider 8 lakh years for simplicity, okay. And before Dwapar Yuga, there was Treta Yuga, okay, whose duration was 12,96,000 years. So let's take it 12 lakh for simplicity, okay. So from current time, approximately some 20 lakh 5,000 years have past, like back, like 20 lakh 5,000 years before the current time. Manu instructed this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Ishwaku. Okay, Ishwaku was in Treta Yuga. He was, as I said, Lord Ramchandra appeared, in his lineage actually. Okay, so this happened some 20 lakh 4 5,000 years back. 20 lakh 5,000 years back. Okay, but this is not the end. Okay, before Manu, like Manu was also instructed by the sun god Vivaswan. Correct. So even before Sri Krishna has given this knowledge uh, uh, to Arjun, it was first given um, by he by Sri Krishna himself to Vivaswan, the Suryadev. Suryadev gave this knowledge to his son Manu, and then Manu gave this knowledge to his son Ishwaku. Okay, and through that disciplic succession, this knowledge kept coming. Okay, down. So some 12 lakh 5,000, some 20 lakh 5,000 years back, Manu gave this knowledge to Ishwaku. Okay, but this is not the end. Why? Because even before this, Lord Sri Krishna instructed sun god Vivaswan. Okay, and Suryadev had transferred it to Manu. So duration of the current Manu is say 30 crore 53 lakh years. Okay, 30 crore 53 lakh years. And out of this entire duration, some 12 crores 4 lakh years have passed. Okay, and if we assume that Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Sri Krishna to Suryadev, before the birth of the current Manu, okay, so it can be concluded that this ancient scientific wisdom is as old as like 12 crores 4 lakh years ago, like it was first spoken. Okay, so you can just imagine how ancient this science is, and till date it is actually it has been preserved. Okay, and thanks to people like Srila Prabhupada, who have translated this Bhagavad Gita in so many different languages, that anyone and everyone today can simply purchase a copy of Bhagavad Gita, and they can get this transcendental knowledge. Yes. So this it's a huge number, right? 12 crore 4 lakh years ago. But this 12 crore 4 lakh is just as far as our calculation can go. Okay, since Lord Sri Krishna is eternal, therefore this knowledge is also eternal. Okay, because this is coming from him. Correct. And this is exactly what Sri Krishna is telling, that this is an imperishable science. Okay, imperishable science. Yes, and this science of this scientific knowledge was given by none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself. Okay, and therefore this knowledge is also known as Aparusheya. Aparusheya means it is coming from something which is meta-human, which is much above human conception. Okay, so it's not being given by some ordinary human being on some mundane topics, okay, of this material world. This is Aparusheya. That means it is coming from beyond uh, human conception. It's a transcendental knowledge. Okay, therefore this knowledge must be accepted as is, without any speculation, without any debate, without any logical reasoning. Just what is there, simply accept it as it is. Why? Because it is coming from the perfect source, so this knowledge is also perfect. As human beings, or as people, living entities in this material world, we are inflicted by four defects. Okay, our senses are not perfect. Okay, we are always illusion, we have tendency to make mistakes, and we have tendency to cheat. So with all these imperfections, how can we debate, or how can we try to do some logical reasoning on the perfect knowledge? Okay, our conclusions will also be imperfect. So there is no need to speculate. There is no need to concoct, or try to come up with your own versions of the Bhagavad Gita. As we see that there are so many, varieties of Bhagavad Gita available today. Okay, and none of them come even as close to what Sri Krishna actually spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Yes, so it has to be taken as it is. Okay, without any mundane interpretations, without any ifs and buts, without any logical reasoning, without any debate or doubts. Okay, just accept it as it is. So this is one another key factor how to read the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and there are several scholars around the world who are just translating it, trying to interpret it in their own way. Okay, so it's nonsense. It's just a wastage of time. Okay, but that is because that is not the Bhagavad Gita as it is. We have to understand it as it is. As it is means as Sri Krishna spoke it to Arjun. Okay, the context in which Sri Krishna spoke it to Arjun, the understanding with which Sri Krishna spoke that to Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Okay, so this has to be accepted as it is through a chain of disciplic succession, and that chain of disciplic succession should be a bona fide one. Okay, it's not that one fine morning I just wake up and I say that okay, from today I'm a guru, I'm a spiritual master, I start making disciples and I start giving the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita according to my own whims and fantasies. That is not the right way. Okay, it has to come from a bona fide disciplic successions. Okay, so just as we have seen that Sri Krishna spoke to the Suryadev, Suryadev spoke that to Manu, Manu spoke it to Shvaku. Okay, so in that way it should come down. Okay, so bona fide disciplic succession is a must. Okay, without that it cannot be understood. One cannot understand by their own efforts. Okay, because this knowledge is not material. This is transcendental knowledge. Okay, so this is the whole crux of the first verse. We have also seen some little bit of introduction about the fourth chapter. Okay, and in the next sloka we'll see that Sri Krishna will also lay some stress on the chain of disciplic succession. This is just some small discussion we did on the disciplic succession, but or the Guru Sishya Parampara. But Sri Krishna will speak more about that in the second and third verse. Okay, so he will tell us that how in due course of time this chain of disciplic succession gets broken. Okay, and then at that time he himself appears in this material world to re-establish the dharma. Okay, so these things we are going to study in the next lecture. So please do join us then, and yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them down in the comment section below. If I feel that the question is very relevant to most of the people, then I will definitely try to make a video out of it. Okay, and there is also one WhatsApp group. So if you join that group, then you can have a kind of a more personalized interaction with me. If you have any questions, then since I am also a part of that group, so I can answer that question directly, and then you can counter question me, and then I will try to answer them as well. Okay, so those things can happen over a chat. So if you are interested, please feel free to join the WhatsApp group. The link for the group is given in the description box below. Okay, and also the contacts of different ISKCON centers have also been given there. Okay, so thank you so much for joining this session. We will see you next week. Till then, Hare Krishna.